medieval history and art history, a medievalist and a specialist of Armenian art and miniature painting. She received her bachelor's and master's degrees from Yerevan State University and her doctoral degree from Université Paul Valéry in France. Her dissertation was entitled The Iconographical, Historical, and Theological Analysis of the Manuscripts Commanded by the First Three Kings of the Hetumite Dynasty. Emma's paper is entitled The Four Portraits of Hetum II, New Observations Regarding the Royal Portrait of the Lectionary of 1286. Emma?
Thank you, Sonaja. Hello, everyone. As Sona already said, my topic is concentrated on the historical, iconographical, and theological analysis of the Cilician manuscripts and miniature paintings. And one of the most important objectives of my work is to find the impact and the influence of the historical events on the development of the miniature painting and the manuscripts. And today I'm going to present to you a paper that is on one of the most interesting, most luxurious manuscripts commanded by one of the kings of the Hetumite dynasty, Hetum II. The problem of the Armenian manuscripts, of the Armenian historical sources, is that they are written by the noblemen for the noblemen. And these sources are made to make happy the kings and the noblemen, so we can't always rely on these sources. And this is the major problem concerning also King Hetum II, on which I'm going to talk today, because in comparison with other kings, Armenian kings and his previous kings, rulers, there are very few sources, historical sources concerning him and giving information about the years of his rule and of his life. These are mostly chronicles, including mostly small chronicles, and the two most important of them are the one written by him himself, King Hetum II, the Chronicle of King Hetum II, and the one written by his relative, historian Hetum of Korikos, as we call him. I'm going to start the paper. On the 6th of February 1289, the day when King Levon II passed away, Hetum II inherited the throne. And anyhow, he was the only Armenian king who has never been coronated and who never married. This extraordinary behavior can be explained by the fact that he received a spiritual education and was very much related with religious life. Even his brothers and the princes of the Cilician court were all of them were begging him and encouraging him to marry and to leave a inheritor of throne after him, but nobody succeeded to change his opinion. We don't have any other information about his private life, and any other sources don't give any other information. In the colophons of the only information we have is the colophons of 13th century, from which we try to get some information concerning him and try to formulate his portrait, his psychological portrait of this person, how he was thinking, what were his thoughts, why he abdicated the throne, and why he was never coronated and never married. In the colophons of 13th century, he's the only king who is called a guardian of the throne and the guardian of a crown, but very rarely a king. Hetum exchanges finally his crown with a Franciscan cape and becomes a Franciscan monk. And this is an exceptional case for an Armenian king. Most of the historians think that this is difficult. It is difficult to give the exact date when this conversion happened, when he became a Franciscan monk. But most probably, this happened during the last years of life of Levon II, of his father, who already was incapable to influence his son's decisions. And having an indulgent character, Levon II was very treating in very tolerant and liberal way his son's actions. Probably several people who were close to Hetum II influenced him in his decision to become Franciscan, and not only to become Franciscan, but from early childhood to have this love for Latinophilia and for the Catholicism. First of them is, of course, the well-known philosopher Bahram Rabuni, who was playing a major role in the court of Levon II. He was an advisor, and he was the advisor of the king and the secretary of Levon II. Rabuni was playing a very important role from the point of view of diplomatic relations. And even if he was of Chalcedonian beliefs, but everyone were closing their eyes on his beliefs because of his important role. He was the author of very important theological, religious, and philosophical works, the interpretations of the works of Aristotle, Porphyr, and Gregory of Nice, Dionys the Areopagite, on the basis of which Hetum II was raised himself, and grace to which he became studious and bibliophile person. Most probably Hetum II made his decision to become a Franciscan monk between 1288 and 1289, when the member of a Franciscan congregation, Giovanni Montecorvina, was visiting the Cilician court on his way to Asia, as he had a mission given by the Roman Pope to convert the people of Asia. And during his stay at the Cilician court, he became close friends with Hetum II. And many scholars think that it's in his honor that Hetum II took his religious name, Brother Giovanni, which is Hovannes in Armenian. Hetum II abdicated the throne several times, but every time he was changing his opinion and coming back. That's why, because of these several abdications, it is difficult to find the exact dates of these abdications, but anyway, and it's even not important to find them. The first portrait of Hetum II dates from the period of his childhood. It's in the Gospel of Queen Keran of 1272, which is actually at the collection of Jerusalem. It represents Hetum II with his family members, with his mother and his father, Queen Keran and King Levon II. And as the elder son of his father, he is depicted just next to him, kneeling. Next to him are his two brothers, the 2-year-old Constantine and 1-year-old, probably 1-year-old Toros. If we examine this miniature painting more attentively, we can see that almost all the faces of the male children are almost the same, and we can think that the artist who was depicting the family probably used Hetum II as a model for the other two children who were like babies at this age, like 2 years old and barely 1 year old, but represented as already a formulated child, not a baby. We can find another portrait of Hetum II in one of the on one of the most luxurious silversmith examples of Armenian art, the reliquary of Skevra of 1293, which is kept in Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg today. This reliquary was commanded by Constantine II Kaguteci, and it was to immortalize the memory of the Armenian warriors perished during the seizing of Hronkla in 1292. It has a colophon which is registered and conserved behind the reliquary. It is a unique piece in terms of technique used for the creation, and it's a masterpiece of Armenian silversmith. On the right and on the left of the reliquary, the images of apostles, prophets, and the fathers of church are represented. The principal image of the exterior doors is the Annunciation of Saint Virgin. Above it is the representation of Saint John, and below is Saint David. We can see Hetum II's portrait in the interior decorations of the right door, represented in the corner in a medallion. Hetum is on his knees, without a crown, and we can see around the inscription, Hetum, the King of Armenia. As Claude Mutafian mentioned many times, Hetum II became the symbol of the propaganda of Catholicism among the Armenians. That's why it's not surprising that we can find another portrait of Hetum II on the walls of monastery of San Giobbe in Venice, which was conserved and came down to us only thanks to the imitation of this portrait made by Father Raymond Alishan. Hetum is illustrated here as with a tonsure, wearing a brown Franciscan cape, on which we can see also a mantle with fur, which makes a part of the royal occidental garments. His right hand is risen in the sign of benediction, and he has a crown is put in front of him. In the inscription under the portrait, one can read, "Blessed Hovannes, Armenian king, put on an ecclesiastic habit in 1294. Then lower down, it is written in Armenian, Hetum II, blessed Armenian king, brother Hovannes." The last portrait of Hetum II is in the famous Lectionary book commissioned by him in 1286, about which I was just saying, and which is kept today in Madena Dayan collection under the number 979. This is one of the most luxurious manuscripts commanded in 13th century, and it is the most mysterious and most interesting from the point of view of iconography and style, as it is very much influenced by Italian art, by Byzantine iconography, and it has very many interesting illustrations which are unique from point of view of iconography, and we cannot find them in any other, neither Armenian nor Western or Eastern manuscripts or works of art. So the last portrait of Hetum is done on the title page opening the text of the lectionary. On the opposite page of this title page is the portrait of Basil the Great, as it was the tradition of illustrating Basil the Great in the Occidental lectionaries. On the upper part of the title page, we see the portrait of Solomon, but the part that interests us is the marginal decoration. Here we see a vertical composition that has nothing to do with the textual part of the page. It represents 6 human characters situated in the vegetal and floral ornaments, which are represented one under the other. Some scholars think that these are the portraits of the members of the royal family. On the top of the marginal illustration, we see a white bearded king who is seated on a throne, dressed in royal garments. His right hand is on his waist, and his left hand is holding a globe with a cross. This character is wearing a mantle on his green dress, which covers his knees. He has a white fur collar on his neck. The king has a long white beard and a crown on his head. He's wearing red shoes. Below him, we see another king, which has a blue dress and red mantle. Those of the previous king, right hand on the, and his gestures are repeating those of the previous king, right hand on his waist, and the left one holding a globe. The main difference between these two characters are, of course, the age, which is shown by the color of hair and beard. Both of them have halos. King Hetum was one of the first scholars who has examined this miniature painting. According to his opinion, the first two characters are the King Levon II and his son Hetum II, the first two kings. Another scholar specialized in Armenian studies, Lydia Durnovo, agreed with him. Below these two kings, we can see another four characters concerning the identity of which the opinions of King Hetum and Lydia Durnovo are not the same. The third character is a young man represented on his knees, holding a crown in his hands. He is wearing a dark violet mantle covering his whole body. The fourth character is represented in a friar's pose. He's wearing a white shirt, which is visible under the blue dress and the red mantle covering the shoulders. With his right hand, he's holding a ribbon attaching his mantle, and in his left hand, he has a golden vase. He's wearing red shoes also. The fifth character is represented on his knees, wearing a red dress and a green mantle. He's holding with his both hands a golden jug. The sixth character is represented in the same pose as the first two kings, right hand on his waist, but his left hand is holding an object which is difficult to identify as the image is partly damaged. Probably, this is a stick in the form of a fleur de lis. He's wearing a green dress and a red mantle covering his waist and knees, and according to King Hetum's opinion, these four characters are the children of Levon II, represented in order of elderness. The 15 years old Toros, 11 years old Sumbat, 9 years old Constantin, and 7 years old Narcissus. Lydia Durnovo has another opinion concerning these figures. She thinks that these are the functionary of the court, each of them represented with the attributes of his function. At the top is the knight with the crown, the guardian of the crown in his hands and kneeling. Then the cupbearer follows him, then the chamberlain with the jug, and finally the butler with the stick in the shape of fleur de lis. According to Irina Drampian, the opinions of King Hetum and Lydia Durnovo are not contradictory, since the four characters represented here can be very well the members of the family, the children of Levon II, but represented as the functionary members of the court, with the idea of Hetum II, the commissioner of the manuscript. The miniaturist represented the portrait of the royal family on the marginal image, has adopted the iconography of the tree of Jeze, Byzantine iconography, which was used to depict the ancestors of the Christ. And this iconography was widespread in Byzantium also, to represent the members of the imperial family, and so it can have influenced the Armenian miniature painting also. Some circumstances forced us to partially refute the opinions of the scientists about the identity of the first two kings. We believe it isn't right to take the second king for Hetum II. In 1286, the date of the Lectionary's illustration, he was still a young prince who had only 21 years old. Who later refused the coronation, and in general, in history, he always seemed to be a very modest person. The second character represented in the marginal image, on the contrary, already has a short appearance of a king. He wears a crown on his head, which is partially identical to that of the previous king, with white hair. In addition, he's represented haloed, and he has a globe in his hand, which is considered a symbol of strength and power. The only portrait of Hetum II that came down to us from the time of his rule is made on the reliquary of Skevra that we have just seen, on which his identity is assured. This one. This is the only image which dates the years of his life, when he was still in life, and on which his identity is assured. Here, as we have already seen, the king is represented without a crown and kneeling. And the most important is that the image is made at the time Hetum II was already a king. We do not meet Hetum's portrait either on the pages of the Bible, which was commissioned by him in 1296. So it seems unthinkable that he would like to see himself as a sanctified king with the symbols of power and strength in his hands on a lectionary, which is commissioned by himself. And which is the most interesting part is that there are only two manuscripts related with Hetum II that have survived today, this Bible and the lectionary book. The second reason of our disagreement with the proposed hypothesis is the white hair and the beard of the first king, which seem inappropriate for Levon II, who was barely 50 years old at the moment of the creation of the manuscript. At the same time, if we take into account that the portrait of royal family is based on the iconography of the tree of Jesse, if we take into account that this iconography is made on the basis of the tree of Jesse, we should take into consideration also that it should represent a lineage, the dynasty, and this dynasty starts with Hetum first, not Levon II. The founder of the Hetumid dynasty is Hetum I, and which should be represented in the top of the tree, as it comes in the tree of Jesse's case. The fact that, thus, from our point of view, the first king of the marginal image represents Hetum I, as the founder of the ruler and the lineage. Then the second king represents Levon II as a 50 years old bearded man. He appears as a legitimate king, symbols of strength and power in his hands. And of course, the third character, bearded and on his knees, is Hetum II, which, unlike all the other characters, is represented in very modest clothes, as we can see, the head raised up. The crown represented in his hands symbolizes the fact that he was the heir to the throne. The fact that Hetum II is nicknamed the guard of the crown in the colophons of the manuscripts remind us once again of his portrait in this miniature, which represents the Hetumid family and where he is depicted holding the crown in his hands and kneeling. As far as the other three characters are concerned, we think that they should be Toros, Sambat and Constantine, respectively, the objects of whose hands are simply added by the miniaturist as an illustration, and perhaps at the request of Hetum II. In our opinion, this version is more logical, precisely about the identity of the characters studied, since we recognize that the marginal image represents the portrait of the Hetumid dynasty. Like, seriously, if you think about this guy abdicated the throne. He refused everything related with power and strength, and he cannot just be illustrated as a king with signs of power, a crown on his head, and haloed. Somebody who has lived in modesty during all of his life and wasn't even a king at the moment of the creation of this manuscript cannot be represented haloed and crowned on a manuscript book commissioned by himself and by his will. The years of the lead of Hetum II was the most difficult period in the history of the Kingdom of Cilicia. In conditions of lack of governor with strong will, the country was in a difficult internal and external situation. On the other hand, on one hand, the Mamluk invasions, and on the other hand, the weakening of the Armenian-Mongolian treaty and the fraternal wars between the heirs in their turn have definitely destabilized the roots of the Armenian kingdom. The irresponsibility of Hetum II has hurt not only the state system of the country, but also the church. In March 1307, at the Council of Cis organized by the initiative of Hetum II, with the help of the Catholicos Gregory of Anarzava, certain decisions were adopted concerning theological and ritual questions which supposed to make great concessions to the Roman Church. The problem with the members of the Hetumid dynasty is that none of them was loved by the nation and they didn't have a reputation of good kings. But we cannot underestimate the value and the role of them as commanders of art, as commissioners of art, because they are the ones who commanded the most luxurious, the most beautiful pieces of art, the most beautiful manuscripts of the Armenian kingdom. And however, we need to appreciate the role of Hetum II as the patron of art and literature, which was perhaps his only contribution to the history of the Armenian kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Now the floor is open for questions. We only have 10 minutes, barely.
Thank you very much. I want to ask about Hetum II. You mentioned that he was celibate, he didn't get married, and when I hear that the king also didn't get married because of his spiritual whatever, I start becoming suspicious. Was he?
Speak louder, please.
Yes. Did he have, like, did you, from your research with his private life, did you notice, did he have illegitimate children, lovers? Was he gay? What exactly, like, what's your opinion about? Because spirituality, come on, I don't buy it. Sorry, about being spiritual and so on. Go ahead.
There is no any information about the lover or eventual children about the second. And the question about being gay, yes, it is supposed by many scholars that he was gay. But this is not the case of just being gay. It's someone who becomes a Franciscan monk, a king. Like, he was raised in these beliefs, and he himself thought that he's not the one who has to have the crown. And that's why he became Franciscan, and he just refused everything related with power and strength. And this is not just about being gay. So it can be a supposition that he might have been gay, but probably the most important fact that he refused the crown is that he was spiritual, and that's why he became a Franciscan monk. So that's my opinion in any case.
Thank you very much for two really very evocative presentations. I found myself really getting excited, especially Samvel Grigorian. Are you working primarily from photographs? I noticed that many of the people, the photo credits were by others. It seems to me like when one or two cases where there were missing inscriptions, if there could be some kind of excavations done in that site, they might find the rest of it buried somewhere. Do you know anything about that? And Emma, I just wanted to say that I found your argument very persuasive regarding the hierarchy of the kings, and it makes sense, especially since I would disagree with the question that was made. I think that Hetum II really was a very spiritual person, and you didn't speak at all about Hetum I. He's one of the great kings in Cilician history, and your characterization of the family not being liked by the people, I don't think that's quite right, but that's my personal opinion. Anyway.
Okay, I'll start. Yes, of course, I agree with you. Hetum first was, of course, a great king because all of the efforts he made to become a king and all of the efforts he made to just found this lineage, of course, it cannot be underestimated. But in any case, he was never supported by the nation because he was considered to be someone who came to power with force. That's why he wasn't supported by the people. That's what I was saying. And that is one of the reasons after that his son, who came to power, had to certify all the time that he's a king who has inherited the throne by the lineage of his Rubenid ancestors. And in all the colophons we see this information and him certifying all the time with all the possible methods to show that he's a legitimate king. And that is one of the reasons also that he wasn't supported at the battle, and he was just taken hostile during the battle, and that's because the Armenians didn't, the Armenian noblemen didn't came to his help with their people. So he was almost alone in front of the army with a very small army, and there were many facts that show that they were not loved by their people, Hetumites, as kings. But what I was saying, that we cannot underestimate their legacy as commanders of art, as commissioners of art. And I am discussing them from this point of view mostly, as commissioners.
Yeah, thank you for the question. My colleagues of mine with me, we use both methods, both expeditions and receiving information, photos, oral histories from residents. And yes, there are a lot of sites, a lot of places, both known and unknown places that can be researched with success, that can be explored with success, because we have found only a few artifacts and only a few hachkars, only a few inscriptions, not only Armenian, but also Greek inscriptions from the period of the Armenian kingdom. And if these places would be excavated, if we would have the possibility to make excavations,
The permission.
yes, I think we will have success with finding more inscriptions, fragmentary inscriptions, not complete inscriptions. But anyway, this information that we have from the little fragments is very valuable.
Any other questions? Professor Kelly?
Yeah, I'd like to add that I thought that both presentations were extremely well researched and well presented. I'd like also to suggest that indeed Emma's suggestion of the interpretation of this very important representation of the tree of Jesse on that Chashot of 1286 is very plausible. Beginning with the origin of the Hetumic dynasty, it seems particularly rather unusual that when Hetum II is basically the Prince Paron to succeed, would be portrayed there already seated on the throne with the crown and the other regalia. I think putting him in third place before the crown, indicating that yes, it is his to succeed after his father's death, seems much more plausible. But there was one other question that I wanted to raise. You, of course, mentioned it in passing largely, but I think it's an important question with regard to his teacher, i.e. Vakar-Ratli. You mentioned, of course, this widespread view with regard to the Chalcedonianism of Vakar. I think it's important to note, and I'd like to get your response to this, that I think the primary source that indicates this is the life of Kevork Stefaratsi. Now, because we know that Kevork was actually very, very close also to the Hetum family and to Levon II. But is presented, of course, particularly towards the end of his life, as being rather left out of court circles, etc. And it seems that in many ways this life is a work of propaganda against these developments then of the Hetimate court with Krukor, Anazarba, and as you mentioned, the Synod of 1307. So, but I think it's very important that when we actually look at the material works of Bahram Rabuni, we don't really see any indication there. He has a number of theological works, including with regard to the Christology and the Trinity. And we, as I say, we don't see any indication in those, any sort of particularly Byzantinophilia or Latinophilia. So I was wondering what you thought about the possibility that simply this is propaganda on the part of this writer, and simply in order to blacken those associated with the court, rather than really being founded necessarily on any sort of hard evidence.
Thank you, Professor Carver. Actually, I wasn't very much specialized on Bahram Rabuni's character, but what concerns Georg Skerbaty, yes, we know that there is this famous article of Artaxerxes Matevosyan saying that he's the author of Chashots, which I don't agree with it at all. About Bahram Rabun's personality, I think that in any case he has played a major role for influence on Hetum, and that even for the case of Chashots, maybe there is his influence and his hand also connected with the Chashots book, and so in future I think I'll just find some more time to concentrate on this personality, because he seems very interesting and there can be some very interesting lines between him and Hetum. So I'll appreciate if you have any other advices concerning this, which we can discuss later. Thank you.
Do you have another question?
I would like to add to the question. Yes. I would like to answer the question. Thank you for it. Silesian Armenian heritage has been destroyed with special energy because very often it had the signs of Armenian statehood. I have presented to you 4 Armenian inscriptions from the village of Maksutoglu, which had been discovered 2 years ago. And one of them has already disappeared. And please guess which of them. Which one of them has disappeared? The inscription of the King Levon and Paron Lasak, not the inscription of the priest Sarkis, not the glorification of God, and not the short fragment, the 4th short fragment. And thanks of God we have the photos, we have video of this inscription. So I think we have great hope to find a lot of fragments of Armenian inscription in Silesian soil, but not on the buildings, on the castles, because they has been destroyed with special energy, even in Silesia. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you everyone for a great panel. Thank you Samver and Emma. Before we go on a lunch break, I have 2 announcements. The first one is the American University of Armenia summer study program, to which you can apply if you're an undergraduate, I think, right, Anait, or anyone? Okay. You can find more information on the flyers back on the table. And I would like to remind you about Arno and April Bookstore and the books that he has down the hall in room 306. 3:06, yes. We need to be back by 2:45, the latest. Thank you.